So what made you decide to take veganism forward as a career as opposed to just a choice of food?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say the whole thing happened sort of accidentally. When I set out doing the blog, I did it purely just because it was a fun little hobby to do. It kept me sane during final year. Like when I didn't want to study, I would get in the kitchen and create a recipe. And but the more I shared, the more, I guess, doors opened in that direction where it started to make me think that I could turn it into a career. And so, for instance, let's say around 2014, 15, I was invited to do like a cookery demo at some food festival. And then that took me completely out of my comfort zone, like a shy kid, hating to speak in front of people. And then all of a sudden, sort of being in a space where I can just talk about what I love, it helped me gain confidence and I just really enjoyed it. So little opportunities like that would kind of come up and I took note of it. You know, someone would say, "Oh, are you open to catering my birthday party?" And then I'd be like, "Well, okay, why not?" And it just grew organically that way. I remember 2016 as well. I was approached by Airbnb when they launched their experiences platform,
Yeah.
and they asked whether I would want to do like a vegan Nigerian dining experience on there. And so these little avenues for monetizing the vegan Nigerian came up and encouraged me to explore that avenue a lot more. And so I just built on that really.
That's good. And but even when I think about the vegan space and a typical vegan, I don't tend to think of a Nigerian person. So how within the industry has that been received?
Hmm. Yeah, it's been a really interesting one. Like I would say some of the people who I consider like really loyal followers on my platform and whatnot are people who are really curious about food in general and who want to expand their horizons. So it's also made up of a few Nigerians, West Africans, people in diaspora who want to incorporate slightly healthier versions, even though they may not go completely vegan themselves. So it's been a mixed bag of reactions. I've also had some extreme reactions from some Nigerians, especially in the early days. You know, one person said something like, "Oh, are you part of a cult?" Another one said,
Cult?
"Yeah."
That's ridiculous.
Another one said, "This is not biblical. Like you're going against God by being a vegan." You know, just all kinds,
Yeah, okay.
all kinds. Um, But in terms of being sort of a Black person in the vegan space, the vegan community, it's been a mixed bag. So I've just described to you like some of the reactions that I've gotten, but when it comes to race and diversity, it's a lot better now than it was when I started. I think back then, the people who were given the most visibility, the people who were sort of quote unquote the poster children of veganism, they had a certain look. You know, it was the yoga going, kombucha drinking, green smoothie making vegan. And so I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me in that space at all. People who were just cooking traditional foods that were sort of down to earth and normal and accessible to people within the Black community. And when we did see our food being represented, they were made by people who were not even part of the culture, really, who were just kind of putting their spin on it. Um, and those were the ones who would, I guess, be given the airtime, they would be given the opportunities to publish their cookbooks. I remember a few years into doing what I was doing, I sort of put a book proposal together for a cookbook, a vegan Nigerian cookbook, and I approached a bunch of publishers. And each and every single time, the response was, "Oh, it's too niche. We don't think there's an audience for this." And, you know, they just came up with one reason or another why a vegan Nigerian cookbook wouldn't work. So yeah, those were sorts of the pushbacks that I would get. And then, of course, now, as I was saying to Shidi earlier on, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement that happened, that kind of, not that it happened this year, but it became more to the forefront this year. I started to see a lot more interest in what I'm doing, and people trying to diversify their feeds, is what they call it. And so then, of course, I experienced that combination of skepticism as to whether this is like genuine, or whether people are just doing it to look good, or whether this is like the start of real change where diverse voices can be really kind of put to the forefront in this movement. So I'm hoping for the best, though.
Well, I mean, I think what I would say is that I got a lot more Black people contacting me for therapy, but also like the social media accounts that I follow, the professional social media accounts I follow, they would talk a lot about. They were kind of talking a lot about it as well. They were kind of like trying to, be allies and, raising awareness about the Black experience. And, obviously I want to hope that it's genuine. I think for a lot of people it was, but there is that skepticism, because you think, is it performative? Is it genuine? Is it just jumping on the bandwagon? Because like, if you're not seen to be championing diversity and inclusion, then that looks bad on you. But if this wasn't the current climate, would you actually have the initiative to try and pursue that? So,
Yeah.
But I guess you've just got to, I guess to an extent, kind of take people at face value and hope that they're being genuine. And at the end of the day, use your own platform to, if it gives you opportunities, you can still use those opportunities for good, and to create more visibility in your industry, because it's needed. Because for me, like, I think you're the first Black vegan, someone who champions veganism and is committed to that I've heard of or come across. And normally the people that I see are normally the yoga girl, sort of bohemian, generally speaking, white people who are talking about it. Even in the media, like on ITV, their news stories and things like that, or Good Morning Britain, and when they're having their debates about veganism and stuff, it's normally white people that they would bring on to talk about it. So it's good to see.
Yeah, and more and more of us are sort of coming up in the vegan space and putting our work out there, and it's really just a testament of just hard work and resilience, and just being true to yourself as well, and putting out work that you're proud of. I think all of those things matter, because the people who care will find you eventually. And I speak to yes, my primary target audience are Nigerians who I want to see sort of embrace this lifestyle, and so like I feel comfortable speaking directly to them. But you just never know the kind of impact you might have. Someone from Senegal or Ghana as well might see this and be like, yeah, you know what, I can veganize my own traditional food as well.
What do you think the difference is between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation in that sense? Is it a case of appreciating, or do you actually think it's a bit more?
Yeah, it's a very, 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 very fine line, isn't it? Because I think sometimes what can happen is when the chefs, for instance, take a traditional Nigerian recipe, as an example, and they put it out there with no proper reference to the origin, and they're not known for amplifying other voices either. And then they might even take that recipe and change it in a way that people from that culture look at it and say, what are you doing? Like, why are you putting ketchup in jollof rice? Like, and just little things like that just kind of grate on the nerves. Whereas, the right way to do it maybe would be like, let's take a really, really popular TV chef, for instance. Say they invite a Nigerian chef to come onto their show to, like, to make it more collaborative. I think that's where appreciation like lies. But you don't just take a recipe, slap your own weirdness on it and then say that this is what it is, because for a lot of people discovering it for the first time, because your platform is so loud and your voice is so loud, they take that as the truth and they take that as the authentic thing when it's really not.
No, I completely agree with that. And there's an example I actually have in my mind. Jamie Oliver, when he did his version of Jollof. And reason why what you're saying is so true, probably a few months ago now, someone I know, one of my colleagues, came in saying how his wife had made jollof rice. And there I was getting all excited. Okay, so how did she do jollof? And then, after he then says to me, it was a Jamie Oliver recipe. I was like, you see, so you want to bastardize. Because I was like, okay, so you need to come and experience real jollof. I mean, that's the thing, I appreciate when people take an interest in the culture.
Yeah.
So I was happy when I heard that my colleague's wife cooked jollof rice, but you're right, if someone as big as him is using his platform, but isn't given the right homage to how it should be, then that's right. How you get other people cooking a variation of it, which isn't what it's supposed to be. And that's happened a lot through history. So it's something that I think I agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the other thing to look at is the fact that, you know, West African cuisine isn't as mainstream as, say, Italian, for instance, or Chinese in this climate. So that's why Jamie Oliver can take like an Italian recipe and make that. I mean, he created a whole series of restaurants based off of Italian food, and I'm pretty sure he's not Italian. And it's just one of those things where, like, because it's so mainstream, no one really thinks about it that deeply. But then when it comes to West African food, it's like the people at the helm of it are not even sort of in the limelight. And so then to have that on top of just taking their recipes and doing whatever you want with it, it's like, oh, it's very uncomfortable.